This is Anime Ricochet. Hello, everyone. This is Anime Ricochet, a podcast where two guys who know nothing about sports talk about sports anime.
Ooh.
My name is Jeff, and I am joined by a man whose long arms might do well in a boxing match, maybe. His name is Kobe. Hello, Kobe.
Hello, and that is true. And when I was practicing fighting as a kid, I didn't do very well, but I kept my opponents away because I have such lanky arms. So you're right.
Is that true?
It is
You're in
true.
fights
I
and stuff?
didn't
Getting
fight a lot,
scuffs?
but there was like one instance where we had like practice fighting, and someone tried to teach us like MMA, a bunch of high schoolers MMA. So we were really bad, but I had long reach.
Did you do that thing where like you put your hand on their head and you keep them from like walking forward?
Yeah, and because that's the ultimate win move because they can't do anything. Your hand's on their head.
Right. That's an instant KO essentially.
Yep.
And we are also joined by a special guest. Her name is Tori, and she's running away.
She ran away.
Yeah, that's that. She's gone.
No, I'm back. I'm here. Hi.
Tori,
Hello. Where'd you
how
run
are
away
you?
to? Don't try to run away from this podcast. You cannot stop Anime Ricochet.
Sorry, it was getting a little dry for me, but I think we're picking it back up now.
Ouch. I see how
Tori
it is.
joined us. Tori joined us during the weekly discussions of Megalo Box, so she's here with us for the actual podcast.
Woohoo.
Yay.
And I guess without further ado, let's jump into it, shall we?
Let's
Jumping to
do
what?
it.
The podcast, silly.
Of what?
Yeah, what
Megalo
are we
Box.
reviewing, Jeff?
It's a new show. It came out this year, this past month. It's a sports anime about a new sport. It's a futuristic sport. It's called Megalo Box.
Ooh.
Okay, have you guys heard of boxing?
Once or twice
What's that?
in passing.
You punch people.
With boxes?
Despite the title, I don't think boxes are involved.
What? I'm outraged.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you got these dudes punching each other. That's boxing.
Okay.
Get this.
All right.
What if you strap a machine on their backs that makes their punches stronger?
That sounds awesome.
Whoa. Sounds sick.
That's a Megalo Box for
I
you,
want to see a
baby.
bunch of matches like that.
Well, have I got the anime for you? It's the anime that we're reviewing. It's called Megalo Box. They named the anime after the sport. Isn't that original?
Ah, I see. Okay, cool.
All right. So we haven't done this in a while. So bear with us, folks, as we regain our Anime Ricochet legs. All right. So Megalo Box is a 2018 anime television series created in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the manga/anime Ashita no Jo. It's produced by the studio TMS Entertainment. They're one of the oldest anime studios in Japan. They worked on Lupin the Third, Detective Conan, great. They worked on the legendary film Akira,
Ooh.
monumental landmark anime film. Have you guys seen Akira?
No, I haven't, but I
haven't.
know it's
I've heard good
landmark,
things.
monumental.
I saw it in the background once, and it was about motorcycles, and at the end there was like a psychic kid involved.
I'm sure that's a really accurate.
I think that's the plot. Anyway, so it was directed by Yo Moriyama, who worked on a bunch of different shows. He worked a little bit on Attack on Titan. He worked a little bit on Death Note, High School of the Dead, Hunter x Hunter, Lupin the Third as well, Ninja Scroll. He worked on the Naruto movie.
Oh, wow.
He did a bunch of different things. He did, he did some visual concepts. It looks like he did some storyboarding and some key animation. So he's got quite the pedigree
My goodness.
in the industry. And it was written by Katsuhiko Manabe and Kensaku Kojima, who, interestingly enough, I believe this is one of their first anime projects because if you look at their IMDb, they work mostly on like TV shows and movies, like live action TV shows and movies. Not so much anime.
So they
that's
ventured
very
into
interesting.
this foray.
Indeed. And also, the music was composed by hip-hop artist Maba Nua. And I don't think he's particularly popular, at least from what I've seen, but I listened to his SoundCloud, and I like what I hear. Is the soundtrack for Megalo Box good? Well, you're going to have to listen to find out.
That was
talk
an
about it
excellent
at one
tease.
point. Okay, so before we get into the show itself, I want to kind of lay the groundwork for. I want to talk about the history about this show.
Okay.
So, like I said before, it's 50th anniversary of Ashita no Joe. Now, let's talk about that very manga / anime. Ashita no Joe means tomorrow's Joe, and it's a boxing manga. So it's basically so this show kind of updated Ashita no Joe by strapping metal robot backpacks onto people's backs. But there's also a bunch of different differences, and I guess we'll discuss that later. But I just wanted to tell you guys how old this show was. The original manga run went from 1968 to 1973 with 20 volumes, and it was published in Weekly Shonen magazine. So this is the kind of manga that, like, if our dads read manga or watched anime, this would be their thing, probably, or they'd watch this. It's old as fuck, basically.
Okay.
The first anime series went from 1970 to 1971. There was a film in 1980. A television series, again, the second season, went from 1980 to 1981. And there was a live-action film. An anime film in 1981. And there were two live-action films, one in 1970 and one in 2011. And let me tell you, I saw some clips of the one in 2011, and it looks shitty.
What?
It's like one of those. It looks like one of those straight-to-DVD or straight-to-TV movies, basically. Kind of low budget. The effects are bad. The direction looks kind of bad.
What effects do you need in a boxing movie?
It looks kind of amateurish. Did I say effects? I meant kind of just the production. The production of it in general just
everything looks
kind
a
of,
little cheap. Got it.
Exactly. It looks cheap. That's the best way to put it.
And this was the movie in 2011.
11. Yeah.
Really?
I didn't see anything about the 1971. I probably should have looked. But anyways, I just want to talk about some notable things that happened in this show. I didn't watch the show at all. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm pretty sure you guys haven't.
No.
You don't know my life.
So have you seen it, Kobe?
No, I
Please
haven't.
tell me.
No, I haven't.
So here's some notable things about the show. I know this isn't about Ashita no Joe. It is about Megalo Box, but I just, after reading the Wikipedia entry, I just had to point these out because I thought it was pretty cool.
Okay.
All right. So the main character, Joe, he has a rival who he punches him so hard that he kills him.
Sick.
Okay, and the final fight, he has so much resolve, so much tenacity. He keeps getting up after being knocked down, that his opponent feels like he's in a nightmare. In that same fight, his opponent ages before everyone's very eyes. In the minutes of the fight, he ages in decades, and his hair turns snow white as the fight is happening. That's how stressed out that Joe makes his opponent feel during the final match.
Yes.
And Joe also dies in the end. Spoiler alert for this old ass show. So yeah, this is kind of the basis for the show that Megalobox is commemorating. And will the show be anything like that? You're gonna have to listen to find out.
All
I'll
one big
watch
tease.
the show.
But that sounds so rad. I want to watch that.
It sounds pretty badass, right?
Yeah, why couldn't... Well, I wonder if Megalo Box would be just as cool as this.
Uh-huh.
I guess we'll have to find out.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to talk about that in general because I find the history of this show very interesting.
And it's really cool that you did that because the whole gimmick of this show is that it has a really old school style. So it was really important that you brought up the history of the show that inspired it, because this is a show that's supposed to kind of, I think, invoke like nostalgia to like an old like 90s feel, older, grittier anime.
Precisely. And one last thing to note is that Ashita no Joe is not just an old ass anime / manga. It is a cult favorite. It's one of the most iconic animes in Japan, actually. In October 13th, 2006, it was voted Japanese favorite TV anime. It placed 4th out of 100.
Oh, wow.
Its main character was ranked 7th in Mania Entertainment's 10 most iconic anime heroes. And one of the craziest things I saw was that, so apparently there's a character named Rikishi who dies in the show. And in March 1970, about 700 people in real life packed the streets dressed in black, wearing black armbands and ribbons, participating in the funeral of this fictional character in the show.
Oh my god, how many episodes?
Let's see here. So the first anime episode, the first season had 79.
Oh my goodness.
And then the second season had 47. And then, like I said, there was 2 feature-length anime films and then 2 live-action films. So it has a storied history.
Man, we got to get to those eventually.
Yeah, you guys got to do a
old
school.
We got to go back.
Anime Ricochet.
Back to the past. Okay, so sorry. Enough about that. This isn't about Ashino no Jo, but I thought it was important to bring it up, to kind of put the show in that context.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about Megalo Box. Now, as we usually do with Anime Ricochet, we begin by discussing the characters in the show. So, let's start with you, Kobe. What do you think of the main character, Joe?
Joe is a very hard protagonist to latch onto because he's so empty. He's so blank. He doesn't have much of a personality. And that's kind of the point, that he doesn't really have one. But it just makes it so hard to base a show around him when you're not really rooting for the protagonist. Right off the bat, I'm going to start with my opinion about... You'll know my opinion about the show because I'm bashing on the main character so much. But I think Joe, as a protagonist, is actually the weakest part of a show, of the show in general. And that makes me very sad. And those are my opening thoughts, Counselor.
Opening thoughts. Tori, what did you think of Mr. Joe?
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. We never really got to see any insight on him. He didn't really talk. His motivations were never really fleshed out. He kind of was just there doing everything. It seemed like everybody was controlling his own options. The only thing we really knew is that he wanted to fight Yuri at the end. And that's about it. That was his whole drive and motivation, which doesn't make for a very interesting story, especially when that's your protagonist.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. We don't really get much internal dialogue with this guy. We don't really see what's actually taking inside his head, or maybe if there's even anything interesting going on inside his head other than the desire to win. And it wasn't until I saw the review of the show from Mother's Basement, actually, and I think he mentioned this in that review. He says that like Joe is an archetype, and when he said that, or when I realized that, it really clicked for me. That and I think the pieces kind of were set in place once I kind of understood what the show was really about. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't really think this is a good show, but within the context of, I guess what I'm about to say makes sense. So Joe is an archetype. He's kind of like a throwback to a very manly character, like anime in the 90s and 2000s. They didn't really have, I guess you could say, or even further back from that. Have you guys seen Fist of the North Star? Mm-mm. Fist of the North Star is an anime which, trivia fact, John Cena is very fond of.
Oh.
And that's a show that's very kind of like one note, very archetypal man character, very buff, just punches everything, punches his way through problems and stuff. And then you go into the 90s and 2000s, you've got, you've got Spike from Cowboy Bebop, and then I guess you've got Samurai Champloo, which is, what were their names again? Spike, I think, was one of them. But basically, these aren't really characters with layers or depth or anything like that. And I guess the Western analog would be Rambo. Character like that, right? Like
character who just does.
Yeah, or even Indiana Jones. Like he's, let's see. I was gonna say Han Solo, but maybe not so much because he actually has some development. But like these are just archetypally manly characters that are meant to fit the role of like, I'm just gonna punch everything and I'm going to win the game essentially.
And in being
does this make him? Go ahead.
So I was just saying, and in being so straightforward, like even though he doesn't really do much, what that does is supposed to inspire all the characters around him to like be inspired by his pureness, by his drive, by his commitment to the cause of just some straightforward thinking. So these types of characters don't develop themselves, but they act as like the crutch of a show for everyone else to grow.
Yeah, exactly. And now does okay, him being archetype though, of course, doesn't make him a good character. And me personally, and I think you guys might share the sentiment as well. I watch a show to get invested in the characters. I don't. I mean, I like a good beat 'em up. You know, I'm not against the idea of like kind of a simple, fun show. But maybe it was just my expectations going to the show. Maybe I was expecting something a little more, because I want to say a lot of the show is really good, but I think the characters are the weakest part of it. And I think the fact that everything else is really good kind of makes that part of it such a letdown, because this could have been a really, really great series, but I think the characters couldn't hold it up.
Yeah, Tori, what do you think?
That's Joe. I think he's uninteresting as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yep. So that's
Next up
Joe.
is Nanbu. Yeah, that's Joe, the main character. Kind of boring. Now we got Nanbu, who is his coach, and
Probably the most non-boring person in the series.
Yeah.
nah, nice.
Think of the most stereotypical coach you could imagine, like all the stereotypes of like a coach, and then Nanbu kind of encompasses a shady version of that.
Yeah. By the way, did we even mention this? Joe is the main character, and also he's the boxer. He's the boxer. His motivation is that he wants to make it to the top of this big boxing tournament.
His name was also Jug Dog for like 3 episodes.
Yeah, and then he got a real name, and he didn't give himself a last name. It's literally just Joe.
Yeah,
Which is kinda
and
fun.
so Joe and Nambu are this team of like outsiders who live like outside the city. Joe doesn't have an identification because all he does is fights, and these two kind of individuals do some shady dealing, and Nambu's in charge of setting up fights for Joe to throw. That's Nambu's character. He's in it for some cash because he wants to make money, and he usually owes people a lot of money.
Yep, that's where he starts out. He starts out making money in an unfair way, and then I guess throughout the series, his sort of whole arc is doing it not for the cash, but doing it for the glory, doing it for Joe, and as they rise higher and higher up in this tournament, his motivations become more and more pure, such that it mirrors Joe. I guess Joe kind of rubs off on him essentially.
Gotta be honest, I didn't like Nambu. I really didn't. I don't know why. Something for him just didn't click for me.
Do you think he was the best character in the show, or is that reserved for someone else though?
That's reserved for somebody else.
Okay.
Really?
All right. What do you think, Tori?
No, I think Nambu's the best part of the show. He's the one that we follow through the entire series. So in a way, I feel like he's more of a protagonist than Joe is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nambu would have to be my favorite character, because of the fact that he, like Tori said, fits that mold of the main character more. One, he actually has some real development. Two, he's also the one making the moves. So Joe in this story is not really a force in the world, I feel like, other than when he's in the ring. Outside of the ring, he's basically just doing what Nambu tells him to do. And outside of the ring, Nambu is the one that's pulling all these moves to move the plot forward or to shake things up. He's the one that's actually involved with a lot of the, I guess, more interesting character moments, and also some of the more interesting plot developments. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think, like Tori said, the story seems to more revolve around him really than Joe, and I think that makes him more interesting. And I just enjoyed watching him more than Joe, honestly.
Yeah, and I think Nambu has a lot of most of the risk for him for this entire show. So, like all the times he's trying to fight. Well, it seems like fighting for his life or fighting for his eye or something. Making all these shady deals because that's who he is. I guess the Scorpion.
Yeah, so basically, one of the he's the guy that pulls himself and Joe out of the slum that they're in and gives them a fighting chance at actually winning a legitimate tournament. Because Joe and Nanbu are essentially slum dogs, and that's how they earn their money through illicit means, and they move their way into, I guess, a more legitimate society, and from there they rise up. And who's the one pulling the two characters along up and over the story? It's definitely Nambu, and it's not Joe. And That's why I think Nambu's the best character in this. Now, that being said, if you compare him as a character to other characters in other shows, he would definitely be more of a supporting role, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to say that in this show, a character that's supposed to be a supporting character ends up being more interesting than the main character, therefore making him the main character, but that in itself is a problem, I think, in the show for providing interest and engagement for me personally. So yeah.
So why do you not like Nambu?
I just think because I saw his arc, like his arc was there, like on paper. He goes from helping, for like using Joe to like get money in the explicit means, and throughout the series, and he learns to actually believe in Joe and want to fight and to learn that. But just something about that arc and the way it was handled, I don't know why it just fell flat to me. Like it wasn't as interesting. And that's probably because. And it probably relates back to Joe itself, because like Nambu's method of inspiration came from a really non-inspirational source, which made it seem unbelievable and rang hollow to me. So maybe again, all these problems stem from Joe, like in the center of the show. So if Joe was stronger, I probably would have believed Nambu's arc like much better. But early on, I wasn't really on board with just Nambu's style, and I thought he was going to be taken out of the story like relatively early. Like I thought he was just going to be a character in the first episode who Joe leaves, and then he's on his own path.
Yeah.
And really, I think that would have been a better avenue to go, because then Joe would have been on his own, and that would have forced the show to make Joe more interesting. By having such, as you kept saying, like Nambu pulling the strings from the side and having to be the one to make the moves and do everything, it robbed Joe of so much agency himself. Like, if this was a show without Nambu and Joe was on his own path to win Megalo Box, or Megalomania, I think is the tournament, then maybe we would have had a much more interesting show, because we would have followed the main character having to do stuff on his own.
Well, do you think that if Nambu was cut out of the series early, they would actually make Joe more interesting? I feel like it would just be a lot more scenes of him just like sitting there doing nothing and not talking or engaging or relating his thoughts.
But that's why, because then then the writers couldn't have done that. Like it's like, okay, we need to make Joe do stuff, because if you don't have Nambu in it, then Joe becomes more interesting.
I mean, they could have made Joe interesting even with Nambu, and they didn't do that.
That's true, and I see that. I think Nambu, because as we were talking about, his arc, like his full arc from start to finish, just robs Joe of his, which is not an excuse, because a great show would be able to balance all of these characters and having their own satisfying arcs, really well, and we've seen a lot of shows that do that, but obviously this show did not.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you that when Nambu was in that first episode, I did think he was going to be just a side character. I think it was just the way he was directed, like the way that he was shot. It was sort of, I guess, at least visually implying that he wasn't going to be a central part of the character. He was always kind of off in the peripheral of the frame rather than being in the center. And his interactions with Joe seemed kind of trivial and kind of temporary. Like there was sort of a weird, like, it didn't seem like there was any permanence in his character from his introduction. Because I think when he's introduced, he just seems like a guy drinking at the bar, and it turns out, oh, he's the coach to Joe, and oh, okay, so he's also the guy throwing the fights. But there's no way this guy's gonna be a part of the main story. But who knows? Maybe that's the point. It's like, this is a schlub that rises to the top. Yeah. But I also thought of something. So in sports, I wonder if this is just not a paradox, but like kind of an inherent problem with this kind of sport where it's an individual sport. Because in a lot of our sports animes, it's usually the team-based ones that I think do the best. Because when you have a team, you have more character interactions that are possible and more interesting developments that are possible. Because of the web of characters that you have to play with and to work with, and the different directions you can really go with in that show. Although in a boxing anime where it's sort of like it's a 1v1 sport, and also there's a coach involved, when it's basically just the coach and the main character like Joe and Nanbu, I wonder if that kind of it's kind of just inherently more difficult to have them both be interesting. Although in the middle of me saying that, I suddenly think of Ping Pong the animation.
I was wondering that.
Yeah.
we brought that up a lot in the weekly discussions, and I'm bringing it up again here. Dang it, because they did. Oh man, I can't say enough good things about that show. But anyways, but still, it could still be a problem.
Even in that case, like even along with Ping Pong, I would also argue Baby Steps is a good example of a single protagonist.
There we go. Of course.
Of the one who, and it's just, that Baby Steps is so interesting because the main character is really trying to process and learn things, and you see him grow from like 0 to like 100, like in a really nice progression of things. So I think that's just a counterpoint of it can be done. It just, needs to be done right.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think team ones just create better dynamics between characters and really can reveal character a little stronger than solo ones.
Yeah, and even in this show, even within the small cast that we have, the little interactions we have between the different characters that normally don't interact, but when they do interact, it made the show more interesting in that moment for me. For example, this next character and Joe's rival, which we'll talk about later. Anyway, so the next character I think we should talk about is, because we say that this is a coachy duo, but really it's a trio, and the third part of that trio is Sachio. Sachio is a little boy who wants to help out Joe and Nambu. They meet inside the city, and Sachio's kind of like a scrappy kid, and he knows a bit about gear, which I mentioned this earlier, is it's the metal box attached to the back that makes people punch harder. Okay, that's called gear. And Sachio, he's the gear guy.
Is he?
Or is he? What do you guys think?
Because that's your inherent problem right there. Because it's not. I don't think it's. Is it a spoiler to talk about how Joe fights? I don't think so. Is it?
Probably not.
Because it happens pretty early on, but because Joe's things, like he starts fighting without gear. Joe fights without it because at first he can't find good enough gear for himself. So you explaining Sachio's role on the team as he's the gear one is a completely moot point because they don't fight with gear anymore. After episode 3. So I think you could cut Sachio out of this show and you wouldn't really lose anything.
Yeah, he was pretty much the most useless character in this entire show.
He had an idea of an arc. There's elements of an arc that's there, but then I just think they totally drop it and they just ignore it.
Yeah, they forgot him for a while. That's why they had to throw him to a babysitter for 1 episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you cut out Sachio, you're really not missing much, and
we would just miss a couple of rap scenes.
Yeah, Sachio, he's the rapper in the show, which is kind of odd, and we'll talk about that later. But anyways, Sachio is kind of a disappointing character because, like you said, he's supposed to be the gear guy, but Joe doesn't actually fight with gear. Okay, so what does that leave Sachio to do? Well, in the beginning, I think they do this only once, but I think they should have done it more times. Basically, Sachio, because he knows about gear, he can kind of give Joe an edge over his opponent because of his knowledge of it. And I think Sachio, who was it that had the ear, who had really good listening? They were able to listen to the machinery of the gear, so they knew when a punch was about to wind up or something like that. I think it was Sachio.
Was it Sachio?
I think was it? I'm not sure. I don't know, but I feel like Sachio did something relevant and cool when he was first introduced, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, he found gear for Joe.
After that.
If he found, I think, that first gear in the second episode. And oh my god, I thought of a great arc for Sachio that we'll get into in spoilers that they should have done a story. I just thought of something awesome. Okay, we'll get into that later.
All right, we'll put a pin on that.
Yeah.
But I think even outside of finding gear for Joe, I think he did something actually useful. But again, maybe I'm just making it up. But I don't know. I think they could have gone in that direction. His knowledge of gear could have been useful. They could have had him be maybe the tactician. Okay, Joe, you're going up against a guy with gear that's really, really slow, but it has super amped up hydraulics or something. So you got to watch out for crazy huge punches. And then that would be cool because then Sachio is actually useful to the team.
Yeah.
And then they would make the sport more. And we'll talk more about how the sport is actually implemented in the show, but it would make the sport more tactical, and like there's actually like a strategy to the fight. But is there a strategy to the fight? We'll talk about that later.
Are we ever gonna get to this stuff?
There's a laundry list of
Yeah,
things
we
to
should.
talk
Is there
about.
anything else about Sachi, or should we move on to the next character?
Nah, he's useless.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
And I think. Go ahead, Kobe.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say 2 more characters. Yuri. He is the rival to Joe from the very first episode. Yuri is kind of the analog to Joe. Joe comes from the slums, whereas Yuri is kind of high up there. He's a top dog in Megalo Box. He's the best boxer, and he's got the best gear. He's got gear that isn't just strapped to his back like a backpack. It's actually like integrated into his muscles. It's weaved into his fiber and his nervous system, and he's basically like half machine kind of.
Yeah, he's the Goliath to Joe's David.
Exactly. He's the guy to beat. And throughout the series, there is a rivalry between these two because they are both the genuine article, which is a term thrown around a lot. Basically, they're both guys that want to win the most, and their intentions are the most pure. And does Joe fight Yuri in the end?
Oh, man.
We'll talk about that later.
I just think, because when I said Nambu wasn't my favorite, because I think Yuri's actually my favorite, and I think Yuri's the best character, because he's the one who has the best interactions with Joe. I could give or take Nambu's interactions with Joe and Sachio's interactions with Joe, but Yuri's interactions with Joe actually, I think, yield something really special, and like that's when the show really thrives. I know in the very first episode it shows their first meeting, and it really sets up the rivalry between them. And even though it kind of drops the ball in the next 10, 11 episodes or so, their first meeting together and like the chemistry that they first share is kind of electrifying. Like it really got me hooked. So that's why I thought Yuri was kind of the best. Even though they don't do much with Yuri, they don't do much as they could have done, and they only try to give him character development near the end, which was, I think, a mistake. There was still something at the beginning, a spark that's what really got me invested in the show to begin with. So that's why I think Yuri is ultimately the most interesting character.
Tori, what do you think of Yuri?
I mean, I don't necessarily think that the beginning interaction was a spark. I don't think it is as magical as you make it out to be. And in all honesty,
I saw doves. I saw, my life flash before my eyes.
Oh, man. I guess we weren't watching the same thing.
Tori just saw shit flung on the screen everywhere.
Yeah. No, I thought it was very, how should I put it? Stereotypical, where the underdog is versing the top dog, and the top dog looks down on him. And then so the underdog wants to get to his level. So it was just very generic to me. So I know as Yuri progressed, I did like him better as a person. And I would have liked to see more interactions and more of his backstory. Because I do think he could have been an interesting character. But I don't think he was in actuality.
Yeah, I generally agree with Tori on this one. So... Kobe, you and I have seen our fair share of sports animes.
We have.
And pretty much every single one of those sports animes, there have been a rivalry. And I have to say, the rivalry between Joe and Yuri is probably one of the weaker ones. Because there doesn't seem to be any I guess, genuine... what is the word? It doesn't seem real. Like, I don't believe it. And again, I think this stretches back to what the show's really about, which is a throwback. It's supposed to be an archetypal show. But like, yeah, the rivalry between Joe and Yuri stems from a look. They look at each other. It's like, oh, you are the real deal. I want to fight you. And it's a very romantic scene. It's at night. It's in the middle of the highway. I think it's raining.
Yeah, the rain stops around them.
Yeah, they know that they are the one. And I don't buy that. I'm not into that thing. I'm into more, I guess, legitimate rivalries with actual stakes and actual conflicts. So I wasn't really invested in Yuri. Like you guys said, he was kind of more developed towards the end. We got to see a little bit more about his personality, about his resolve, and that's what made him slightly better than Joe in terms of being a likable character. That's what I have to say on Yuri.
I would agree if it was just that rain meeting between them that that sparked their rivalry. But what I really liked about the first episode is that it did expand more on that, because the first episode, they meet kind of in the middle, and then when Joe's fighting in the ring in the underground, all of a sudden Yuri, the champion of the world, shows up in this dingy underground hut to beat the shit out of Joe for disrespecting him in the ring like that, and he destroys him. And that's why I really liked their rivalry in the first episode, because it goes a step beyond. It shows Yuri not taking any disrespect and checking this guy out because he sensed a spark, and then being proven wrong because he beats the shit out of Joe, and then it sets Joe up for redemption, not redemption, but sets Joe up for to face him again down the line. So I agree with just the fact them standing in the rain wasn't a strong enough spark, but I just think the whole first episode did a good job of convincing me personally about the rivalry and making me excited going forward.
Okay, I disagree, but
good. More Yuri for me.
Yeah. It was just, I don't know. It didn't seem that special, them fighting. And then him beating the shit out of him. Well, of course, because he's the top dog and he's not. How would him fighting this junk dog and beating the crap out of him convince anybody that he's the genuine article?
Convince who's the genuine? Yuri or Joe?
Everybody. Even the audience.
No, but for who's the genuine article? You said
Joe.
that Joe's the genuine article?
That's because that's what Yuri says throughout the show. It's it's because he's a genuine article. But I don't believe that Joe's a genuine article. If anything, he's a fraud. He's not genuine.
But
he's been faking his way out.
He's not, because he is a genuine article because he does better without the enhancement, because on his own as a person without the gear around him, that's what makes him a strong boxer. He probably would have held his own against Yuri better if he didn't have his gear on. So he is the genuine article because he doesn't need the enhancements, and when he has the enhancements, he does worse.
You think so?
No, I'm defending Joe way too much, and I don't want to be doing that.
Well, it is proven in the show that he does do better without the gear.
Yeah.
I just think he's actually taking it more seriously. I think he would have done okay with the gear. And you think that
he's a tryhard.
So
if he just found some gear.
If he would have had gear throughout the season, do you think he would have been still the genuine article?
No, I don't know.
No, because that's because he's using gear.
The whole
but
it's so stupid how he gets rid of his gear. It's just because out of the fact that he can't find any that he decides to start fighting without gear, and then it becomes a whole rallying cry around him. There's that whole thing was handled poorly.
Yeah, it was more of a reaction rather than a conscious decision. It was
well, I mean, in a real life scenario, these slumdog millionaires, not millionaires, they're not going to be able to afford gear. So I think that's more of a realistic scenario. It would be more fantastical for them to just suddenly find gear, or them to have it appear to them before their eyes. So I could believe that.
Well, I would believe it if there was any inclination that Joe really wanted to fight without gear, from the beginning. I don't remember there being really any inclination of that. That
it
he
was
hated
more
his
Nabu's
gear.
idea.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be more of a gimmick.
Yeah. Anyways, we can move on to talk about these characters a lot.
So Yuri, another reason why I don't like Yuri is because he's mostly a lapdog. And who is he a lapdog to?
We have to talk about her.
Yeah, not too long. But she's supposed to be the antagonist, maybe? I don't know. Basically, Shirato is the one. She is the president of the Shirato Corporation, who is hosting and organizing the Megalo Box tournament. So she's basically the one that's setting up Megalomania, and she's looking for the top 4 fighters to face each other in the ring, and her fighter, Yuri, is going to be amongst those 4 fighters. Basically, her whole motivation is that the gear that Yuri has is based on her technology, and she basically wants to prove that her technology is the best, using Yuri in this competition. So that's basically Shirato's character right there. Having said that, I think she's probably one of the weakest characters. She might be a little better than Sachio, But I think Shirato is kind of a waste because she's supposed to be this very powerful figure in society. Because she's the one hosting one of the most popular sports events in the city. But more things are done to her rather than her actually doing things. And you'd think that being the president of a company, she would roll over less. But really, she basically ends up submitting to the woes and the needs of Joe and Nambu and Sashio and Yuri. Basically, all these people that are supposed to be beneath her, she is unable to stop, basically. Unable to stop their plans. She even does things for them, which, I mean, it's kind of unclear. I mean, I guess it's a little more clear. Eventually Joe becomes a great boxer, spoiler alert, and she wants to keep the tournament going, whatever. But I just think that someone with that much resources at hand should be a more active player in society and in the story, more importantly.
Agreed.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say about Shirato than that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
In a
Okay, she
nutshell.
sucks. Okay, so those are all the characters. Overall, it seems we're all in agreement that it's a pretty weak cast. It's difficult to know who to root for, and not many of them are likable.
Agreed.
So let's move on to the actual sport itself, Megalo Box. As you know, Megalo Box is based off of a real-life sport called boxing. We learned this earlier.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Okay.
But let's talk about Megalo Box in this context, and let's talk about the sport itself and how it was implemented in the show, and if it was interesting to watch and all that stuff. So yeah, what did you guys think of Megalo Box in the context of the show?
The idea of it sound so cool? Two guys with gear that enhances their
Robot
boxing
arm.
abilities, strapped to the back and fighting over it. Doesn't that just sound awesome?
It sounds great. It's what hooked me onto the show.
Yeah.
And-
It's like Sock'em Bock'em robots in real
Sock and pop 'em roll.
Yeah.
Is that
Agreed.
what the name is?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
and I get it, like the direction of the show, like they want to do a theme of, as we mentioned, a genuine article, and like you don't need the gear to be the good fighter because the truth is, it's like the real fighters come from within and they don't need any of the enhancements. But man, and I get that, but man, I would just wanted to see some robots fight each other. Is that too much to ask for? To see some
Yeah, you
robot
know
on
what?
robot fights?
You know what they should have done with Joe? Instead of making him be gearless Joe, they should have just made him like super gear Joe. Like, they just like layer it on. It becomes like a
Gearful
mech,
Joe.
a mech anime.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
that would be
Oh
so
my
good.
god.
Then it just keep
Imagine-
building, so it changes everything about the show. It's not that Joe fights without gears, that he fights with even more gear, like than any,
He
than
fights with
anybody
too
else.
much gear.
You don't need
much gear,
You don't
Joe.
need to
Oh
be a
my
man anymore. You can be more machine than man and win.
Dude. Okay, imagine a show where every single fight, a part of him is replaced. Like maybe one episode it's his eye, and the next episode you see like part of like his bicep is
He becomes a
replaced.
cyborg.
Yeah,
at
he's
the
just
end.
like he becomes less and less human.
Ah.
Oh, that could be the villain, or something like that. I don't know.
That's true, but then,
either
because
way,
then if it's your main character, then that's a great tragic tale, like because he keeps upgrading himself to be the best
he
boxer.
loses his humanity.
But then, yeah, once he gets to the top, he no longer cares because he lost all sensation and feeling within him. Man, that sounds rad.
yeah, and he fought because he wasn't the genuine article anymore. He lost his articles.
He lost it so much.
he's just a genuine and like inanimate object now.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so about Megalobox. Here's what I have to say about the show, and you guys probably know this, but I like a sport that's got some thinking involved. I like a sport where they try different tactics, different strategies, where both sides are trying to read each other, figuring out what they're thinking, figuring out what their strategy is, overcoming the problems and obstacles in front of them, using their heads and their athleticism. But in this anime, it didn't seem like we had any of that. And in the end, it didn't really seem like this show was really about Megalobox, because the actual matches themselves were kind of repetitive. So I'm going to spoil the entire show.
All right,
In
we're
one
gonna
sentence.
so we'll enter spoiler territory.
Actually, well, kind of a spoiler territory. You know what? Maybe we could mark it as spoilers. Anyways, I was just gonna describe every single match in the show, which is I guess kind of a spoiler-ish.
Okay.
Every single match in the show starts off with Joe getting his ass kicked, and ends with him getting up over and over again, and then punching the other dude once, and then winning. That's pretty much every single fight. Am I wrong?
Nope.
That's it.
There's maybe one exception to this, and I think we can talk about that in the I guess legit spoiler section, but that's pretty much every single fight, and there's not really a lot of variation. The variation comes in the characters, it comes in the opponents. I guess it comes in the situation that they find themselves in around the fight, not exactly in the fight themselves, but the greater story at hand. But other than that, the actual sport itself is kind of secondhand to everything else around it, and I guess that's the point. Is that this isn't really? I don't even know if I'd really call this a sports anime, to be honest.
Well, okay, but if the sport is very repetitive and not interesting, and the characters are very not interesting, what's this anime about?
What kind of show is this? I don't know. A drama.
A beautiful looking one.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this question.
Sure.
Watching this, would you want to do Megalo Box? Like, you always ask that question. Does it make
Yeah, do you want to try Megalo Box?
Yeah, do you want to do this sport?
No, I don't. No, I don't want to get hit in the face by some robot.
I was gonna say like, no. The most I would do is, basically bop'em sock'ems, rock'em sock'ems. Those better than a pillow fight. That thing.
Sock 'em bop.
Yeah, sock'em boppers.
Would I watch
That's it.
this sport? Yeah. Would I play it? No.
Yeah.
What about you, Tori?
I would not do Megalo Boxing, but I think I would cosplay as a Megalo Boxer. Wouldn't that be
Ooh,
sick?
that would be a really cool
that's
costume.
A good cosplay idea.
That's a good
That's
idea.
a good one.
Was anyone else not upset, or anyone else upset that the picture of Joe in like the preview looks really sick, like with him with his boxing gloves and his tattoos.
Yeah, it's
all
like
over
up, and
his
his like gears like kind of
robot
run
arms.
down and like scratched up.
Yeah.
It is a sick poster. I would probably buy it because of how cool that image is. And then, were you gonna say that it's kind of lame that
Didn't
doesn't
happen.
really, that only happens in like the first episode? Maybe.
Well, he's not even wearing that type of gear. It's all shitty gear.
Yeah.
And then he gets to no gear, which is worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the actual sport?
No, not really. We can move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess on to the good things in the show. The animation. I think we can agree that the animation is, well, me personally, it's definitely some of the best that I've seen in the past few years. It not only evokes that sense of the style from the 90s and previous and prior. It's just really well done. It the way that they animate the show really lends itself to a really good tone and a really good sense of environment and place. And yeah, it's just a masterfully done. It's a masterfully looking show.
It looks beautiful.
It's pretty.
It does. It's like one of because there's I would say the different types of animation styles we've seen are from Ping Pong the Animation, Welcome to the Ballroom, and now Megalo Box. And out of those like three, like this one is just a lot of fun to look at. This one is just like one that like lives on its animation. That's both like new and old at like the same time. That makes it both gritty but also really like clean. I just speak two opposite words and like go back and forth, and that's how you describe this this animation style. But yeah, I really like the animation style is what hooked me to begin with, and I'm sure it hooked you guys too.
Yeah. With that poster too.
Yeah. And then not only is it animated in general beautifully, but like I like the fights are repetitive, yes, but they're still kind of cool to watch. Like
there are moments,
the
that
force
really
of the
stick out.
punch, the force of the punches, of the blood splatters. There was a really good sense of impact whenever a blow was landed, and I really appreciate the animators making that look as awesome as possible. Of course, the context and the content of the fight eventually made it kind of repetitive, and it kind of made it boring to watch, despite the good animation. But initially, it was really cool. So yeah, and then of course the music. I really like the music in this show.
Me too. It has a
it's
chill
got-
vibe to it.
Yeah, it's got a kind of cool. It goes between like a very gritty kind of hip hop vibe with rapping and stuff like that occasionally, and kind of like a cool, yeah, like a chill vibe. Like, yeah, we're just gonna relax in the hot sun in the slums.
Yeah, I mean,
That kind of feel. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
People boxing and fighting each other, like we can listen to the same music, just like chilling in the back of like a backyard, chilling, smoking a joint or something like that.
Smoking a joint.
Oh yeah.
I gotta say, so like I said, the music the music was composed by Maba Nua, and I went to his SoundCloud, and like I said, I like what I heard. On the SoundCloud was the Megalo Box main theme, and I gotta say, the main theme for this is sick. Like it's the kind of thing you would listen to before a boxing match,
Cool.
or before doing anything intense, like washing the dishes.
Is that how you psych
That's your
yourself up to wash
definition.
dishes?
Your dog.
Just like listen to this. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it'll-
check that
it'll
out
make it
after
worth
this.
it.
That'd be cool.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Animation and music were the two best things because it really created the world around it. Like it really set the mood and the tone really well. Too bad everything else kind of fell flat.
And then as for the plot and the themes, in the beginning, I was really excited for the show because the animation was one thing, the music was another thing, and it kind of gave me like, looking in retrospect, it wasn't even a good like introduction to the show, but at the time, because there was a lot of goodwill towards it, it was very highly anticipated. I was anticipating it as well. I was kind of, I guess, sold from the beginning because I was like, yeah, this is a cool show. This is gonna be really cool. But then as it wore on, the plot kind of grew thin, and the more I watched it, the more its flaws were exposed. And then I guess the themes would be, don't give up.
Be the genuine article with the person is stronger than the machine.
Yeah.
Which I
guys-
didn't really care for.
All right. So, well, I guess we should move into spoiler territory.
Let's do it.
All right. Spoilers. Look at the thumbnails to jump ahead. We are in the spoiler section now. Okay. So what do you guys want to talk about? There's a lot to unpack, maybe.
I guess my favorite scene that's a spoiler is the scene where he's fighting that soldier guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Clearly
I really
the
want
best.
to mention that.
Yeah, the best two episodes of this series by far is when he fights. What's his name? Like Arake?
Araka?
Let's see. Whatever. Let's call him Arake. Aragaki.
Aragaki.
Yeah. That was,
Yeah.
and that's what really showed the potential of the show. Of just like, man, you can really craft opponents who are interesting. It really invoked like some other animes, like kind of like Baby Steps in the sense where like all of a sudden the who they're fighting is like has this really interesting backstory, and the way they paired Arake's backstory with like Nambu, gave Nambu some more depth, along with just giving some weight behind the fight. And just like if every fight was like that, this would have been a really excellent show.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sports animes that you guys have seen do this, where they tend to put the backstory behind the antagonist of that episode, and it kind of gives you a general idea of how they ended up there. So I think they should have done that a little bit more often.
Yeah,
I
really
completely
can't.
agree.
I don't even really know. I forget everybody else who we kind of fought, except for
Yeah, me too.
for Arake.
I remember Aragaki. I remember Yuri. I remember the shark guy.
There's a
Shark guy?
Yeah, he was one of the first fighters. He had like shark gear, and he was like really aggressive.
He was like the because like that's when they kind of were throwing some strategy. It's like, oh, he's going to fight dirty if you get him angry or something.
Yeah,
Oh,
piss him
yeah.
off, and then he'll lose his balance or whatever. But
I
yeah.
remember the lion guy.
Oh yeah, the lion guy was.
Well, he wasn't
cool, I
important. They
guess.
knocked him out like immediately.
I
Yeah.
know.
But yeah, Aragaki. I think that those two episodes was when the show peaked. And it's a shame because I was only halfway through the series. It was episode 5 and episode 6. And I love the way that it ends too. It's like it makes sense. The way it ends is Aragaki doesn't get knocked out. Joe doesn't get knocked out. What happens is that Aragaki, because he has these prosthetic legs because of the war that he fought in. They give out, essentially. And he basically gave it his all, but at the end, he was basically limited, all due to an accident that happened a long time ago. And that's kind of tragic, but also, you know what? It was a really good ending. It couldn't have ended any better, I think.
It made for the most interesting episode, or boxing match, I should say.
Yeah.
I would say, like, any match in a tennis, or I keep saying tennis because I got Baby Steps on my mind, hardcore for some reason. But in like this type of anime, after a match between the protagonist or an opponent, they're supposed to end on, walking away, like, learn something, like, both of them. That's when it's a really strong thing, when both sides learn something. And this was really the only instance where that was followed through really well. Because, like, even though Joe doesn't learn a whole lot, I mean, sure, Joe probably learned a little bit, but Aragaki also came away from that being changed from the fight, and that's more of what I wanted to see when it boils down to it.
Yeah, and these were Nambu episodes. These were episodes that were very heavily centered around Nambu, and the stakes that revolved around it were basically, it was basically revolving around him and Aragaki. So it was very low stakes, very personal, which I prefer in my sports animes. I like more personal things than like, gotta win the tournament stakes, which is still important, but. Yeah, and I was hoping after we saw these 2 episodes that we would have more of these kinds of fights, but maybe revolving around other people. Like, I was hoping maybe Sachio would have something like this, where maybe, I don't know, maybe Joe has to fight the guy that killed his parents or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe Joe has to fight someone that is just like him. Maybe he's a slumdog. He has to fight someone that grew up around the same conditions that he did. I mean, there was like the worst thing about it is that it shows that these writers are capable of writing very interesting and very personal stories within the scope of this anime, but they didn't do that for the most part. And I think it's mostly, I keep giving it the excuse that it was only 13 episodes, but I have to invoke Ping Pong the Animation again and say that they did it in there and they can do it in here if they really wanted to.
They could. Yeah, I don't think episode length really affects it. Could you imagine if this was longer, how kind of boring this would have been? Because it would have been the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
They did pack a lot of plot in there. I remember when it was like episode 10 or 11 where we were kind of discussing, like, are they going to wrap everything up in time? Like, how are they going to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe if it would have been a little bit longer. They would have, I don't know if they would be called filler episodes, but at least like episodes where they can go into the background of in these characters, or even just like flash moments of their lives. So I think it would have been a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk about, I want to talk about in the spoiler section, it's like, what really sucked all the drama and tension out of the show is the fact that they dropped Fujimaki's the gangster, like the threat of him.
Oh yeah.
like really on, like early on, it creates some great stakes. Like a gangster buys them their pass and then to like win. Like, because it's like, oh, if you win this match, then you owe me a lot of money. That immediately creates some type of drama throughout your driving force of the series, right? Because, there's a bad guy pulling your strings, and that's not going to turn out well. But then by like, I forgot it has to be like episode 8 or 9 or 10 or so. Probably like 9 or 10. Where, they repay their debt and everything's fine. And then Fujimaki disappears from the story. And that is so lame, because that, like, oh, what am I really stressed out for now? Like, what? Because there was a really, even though that monologue about that Fujimaki gives about the scorpion and the frog is overdone, I think. It's just, I don't mind hearing that, because I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I kind of like the way that it ended, because it made sense. So that the whole conflict was like, yeah, if they don't throw this one fight, then Fujimaki is going to cut out Nambu's eye.
Is it just his eye, or were they going to kill him? Like, I thought his whole life was on the line.
See, I guess that is a little confusing, but how it ends is basically Nambu is like, he fights, because Nambu was on the verge of actually having Joe throw the fight. But in the end, Nambu stands up for his boy Joe, and then he cuts out his own eyeball. And then Fujimaki's like, well, I guess we got what we came for.
And that's why that's so lame.
That's about it.
Yeah.
It would have
Doesn't
been.
make any sense.
I would have. Yeah, that was so stupid. I would have loved it because it leads up to the fact that Joe finds out that Fujimaki and Nambu are going to convince him to throw the big match to make a lot of money, because all the bets are on him, and this makes Joe mad, forcing Nambu to come into like a realization of his own that no, he believes in Joe. Creates kind of a good moment where Joe's down in the ring, and then Nambu comes to his aid and becomes a true believer, and he has to fight off Fujimaki's guards. Nambu should have died right there, or he should have done something to take someone out, because that would have given the moment more weight, like that actually meant something. But by diffusing it, it's just like, oh, he cuts out his own eye, and then Fujimaki's like, oh fuck, this dude's crazy. Like, and it's like, okay, you can do what you want. I don't really care. It's just a lame ending to me.
It is, and especially because of previous episode and that same episode, they were talking about the risk not just being for Nanbu. They were hinting that they're in a team. It's not just him that's being put on the risk. So that's why Sachio went to the Shiratoa girl, because she was supposed to offer him protection.
Oh,
but, yeah. So what was the point of all of that if they weren't even gonna take out their eyes or kill them?
That's a good point. Yeah, I was gonna say I liked how it ended, because it's like Nambu kind of showed that he was willing to basically fuck himself up for Joe. But I guess on the other hand, it is kind of it was implied that Fujimaki wanted more than just his eyeball.
Yeah.
And Fujimaki didn't seem like the kind of character that would just let a simple turnaround like that go. He wouldn't forgive something like that. Like he'd probably kill him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, okay, great.
Him.
What am I supposed to do with an eyeball, you fucker?
I mean, not only that, because of not only just from the money that they owed him, but they placed a lot of money to bet in against Joe. So that
in that match.
He lost a lot of money, true. Yeah, that's true. Huh. He's broke now. He's a slum. He's in the slums.
But it's okay. He has an eye.
Yeah, he can use that eyeball for all kinds of things.
Yeah, that whole storyline I thought was...
Can sell it.
That whole storyline I thought could have been no better.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. You guys want to talk about the ending?
Sure.
Okay, so how does this end? Okay, so we had a lot of different theories about what was going to happen during the ending. But what happened in the end is they pulled a ping pong the animation. So Yuri and Joe finally get their long-awaited match after Yuri rips out the integrated gear from his body, which I guess I don't know really if it would have. Do you think it would have mattered if he didn't do that? Like if he didn't pull out the gear and he just kept the gear on and they just went to the normal fight, like would that have mattered? I guess it would have. It would have, because he ended up being crippled from that fight and from the fact that he lost his gear. So
I go back to that moment and think, like, because Yuri was convinced beforehand that fighting without gear is like the real thing, but like you really could have had that afterwards. Like it would have been a better story if Yuri fought with the gear, and then him and being a character that's so invested in the gear and believes that he can't do well without it. So then when someone beats him without it, that's what gives him the wake up call to be like, I can be better, like I don't need this gear. I'm myself. I'm my own boxer. Like even if it was like during the match, like all of a sudden, like, because you said like he rips the gear out, but it's not. It's like a whole episode buildup where he has to go to the surgery room and get it taken out and go through extraordinary amount of pain. A really cool moment would have been like if they're fighting and if, I don't know how logistically it would have worked, because I know it's integrated into a system, so it probably wouldn't have. But it's like while they were fighting, he's fighting with the gear, and then like he starts losing, and then he rips it off himself to like not fight with the gear anymore. That would have been a really cool fight.
Damn.
I was thinking like
that would have been sick.
If he would have lost to Joe with gear or without gear, and then he had his gear, that could have been a really good like final episode where Yuri is going into surgery and you see him go through all this torture. He might come out crippled at the end, which would be kind of sad, but he might be like, this
like a good satisfying. Like, do you want to remove the gear? You might be crippled. He's like, yes, I do. Like this out, get this off of me.
Yeah, they still could. Yeah, they could have done the exact same ending, but moved the removal post fight, and it would have been probably more impactful.
God. Man.
But Joe would have got his ass kicked.
Would he have, though? No, he would have got his ass kicked, but he would have gotten up one more time and punched him in the face.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
Anyway, so that fight, how it ends is they pull ping pong the animation. There's a final frame where they kind of go at each other. Freeze frame. Flash forward. We don't know who won. We only know where everyone's at. Nambu's opening a gym. Joe, I guess, is helping out with the gym. Yuri is crippled. Shirato is doing a new Megalonia. And at the end, we find out that Joe is the one that wins. So basically... Oh, and the one thing to mention too is Yuri is friends with everyone. He's friends with Joe. He's friends with Sashio. Nambu, apparently, they hang out on the beach.
Nambu has a garden.
It's a happy ending. And I was not a fan of it.
I was not either.
Because, as I mentioned in the review, this show would have lent itself better to a bittersweet ending. Because the tone of the show was certainly kind of grim and gritty. And it was kind of weird that it went all peaceful, happy sunshine at the very end. So I just think that's kind of a turnaround, kind of a weird thing. I think they should have gone bittersweet, and I think they should have followed the example of Ashita no Joe and just straight up killed someone.
Yeah, I was really hoping one of them would die, or both of them would die.
Yeah, they've been hinting at it the whole time, with every title being about death. And the inspirational manga, apparently. So many people died.
Yeah. The rival got punched so hard that he died. And then the main character, Joe, he himself died. And he made his opponent, made his hair turn white in the middle of the fight, which is fucking awesome.
Oh, but Yuri's hair is already white.
Oh my
That's
god,
why.
we get it now. Oh my god, we solved the fucking riddle. Wow. So yeah, comparing these two shows, I mean, I haven't seen Ashita no Joe, but just, I guess, reading the Wikipedia entry on it, I don't know. It makes it seem like Ashita no Joe was more interesting. The fact that they were willing to just kill off characters. I mean, the first rivalry, they just kill that guy and then they move on to another fight.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome, if you ask me.
Lame ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think we've talked about all the ways it could have been a little better.
Mm-hmm. By the way, so before we end the spoiler section, I just want to tell you, Kobe, that you're kind of getting really staticky. Is there anything going on in your line?
On the phone call?
Yeah, on the phone call.
Is there anything going on in the background? It's like...
Do you hear us clearly?
Yeah, I hear you guys. Oh, I guess I kind of hear some static on the phone call.
You're really staticky. But we can wrap it up really quickly, so...
As long as you can hear us and we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you guys, and this shouldn't affect the actual recording at all, because I could just...
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's jump right in. Okay, so we will exit the spoiler section now. And 3, 2, 1. We're back from the spoiler section.
Whoa, we made it. Man,
crazy.
You guys should go watch Megalo Box to go hear that spoiler section.
You? Let's move into the conclusion, folks.
Wait, first I guess we need to do MVPs.
Oh, right, the MVP section.
I don't know why I brought this up. I got immediately sad that I remembered this, because there really aren't any huge MVPs.
Who is the MVP? Do you have one, Kobe or Tori? I still got to think of mine.
The army guy.
I was about to say that. Aragaki.
Aragaki. Okay, he's my guy too. Let's do Aragaki together. Yeah. Okay. So you gotta watch the show and listen to the spoiler section to know why Aragaki is MVP.
Oh man, you're teasing them. That's great.
You gotta know. Okay. Yeah. So MVP Aragaki. So conclusion. What do you guys think of the show? What do you give it?
Are we rating it?
Or are we giving final thoughts?
You can do both.
What's the rating system again?
I don't know, Kobe. What is the rating system?
I was hoping you would ask me, because it's been like 6 years since we've last recorded. Okay, our rating system is on a scale of 1 to 5. And 1 is we don't like it. 2 is that we like it, but we'll never... No. Oh, God. 2 is that we don't like it, and... No, 2 is that
You know what? I'm done with the rating system. I don't want to rate these shows anymore.
You don't want to rate them anything?
What?
Ratings are everything. Ratings.
Yeah.
You guys can keep rating things if you want, but I'm gonna do something different because I always struggle with giving a concrete number to a show. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna tell the viewer if I recommend it or not. That's pretty much what I want to do.
Well,
So in sports terms, was this a strikeout? Was this a slam dunk, or was this a bunt where it's just like kind of okay?
Okay, I'm gonna give it a bunt out of 5.
A bunt out of 5.
Okay, that's my rating, and all I'm gonna say is, okay, if you have a history with Ashita no Joe, and if you really, really love the old school anime aesthetic, you love gritty archetypes and that kind of gritty, grim setting, and if you just like watching people punch each other, then I guess I recommend this to you. But there are so many other good sports animes to invest yourself in, and animes in general, in particular, animes of this length, this 13-episode length. There are plenty of other shows that I think are better to watch than this one. So I will not recommend it in general.
So
I
have
Go ahead,
have
Tor.
an epiphany to share.
Ooh,
Uh-oh.
an epiphany.
Epiphany alert. Epiphany alert.
And I don't know if you guys share in this, but I'll share with my experience, and maybe you guys will find it's similar, or maybe you'll just, throw poop at me or something.
That's what we do around here.
So I've been on a couple of Anime Ricochets with you guys, and if I haven't, I've been there watching the animes that you guys have been watching generally, as long as they're interesting. But normally, the formatting goes is that you guys pick an anime and you binge watch it for a week, a couple of weeks, depending on how many episodes they are, where you go through and watch every single episode consecutively without having to wait.
No breaks. Really.
Yeah, no breaks, or, waiting for each weekly episode to come out. And I think that when you experience an anime where you're watching it from a week-to-week setting, where they leave you with cliffhangers or leave you with things that you may not necessarily, not know the answer to until next week, or you can only hypothesize. I think that makes an anime a little bit better. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5.
Ooh.
Okay.
I think if I would have watched the series...
If you binge watched it, it would have been worse.
Yeah, if I would have watched it in 13...
would have been unbearable.
Exactly, with 6 hours to watch it, and binge watch it. By the end, I wouldn't have probably been invested. I probably would have wanted to stop halfway through, or actually halfway through. That's when it kind of peaks.
Yep.
But maybe a couple episodes later. But I think by watching it from week to week, where you're not exactly sure how it's going to turn out, but you're waiting to find out how it turns out, I think it makes it a little bit more spicy.
So your impression of it, watching it week to week, gives it a higher score. But to the listener, the series is all out now.
Yeah.
They can watch it basically all in one go. They can watch it in a day. Would you recommend the show to them? Or would you change your rating in that case?
No, I think my rating is based off of my experience.
Okay, 3 out of 5 from Tori. Mm-hmm. Kobe?
I'm trying to think if I agree with Tori's assessment, because on one level I do, about the fact that I was watching another anime, Food Wars, and I'm saying just because those cliffhangers were so good that week to week it was invested. Like, I was invested in it. But these cliffhangers weren't strong enough for me. So it's like, ideally, that concept can work as opposed to binge watching from start to finish. Do I think it worked with this show? I don't know. Do I think I would have liked this? I was thinking about that while we were talking. If I would have liked this show better if I just watched it from start to finish, like nonstop. Like if I would have gotten a better sense of the complete story. Like maybe things like Joe's decisions would have been better showcased, or I would have understood his motivations more if it wasn't split up so much time. But it doesn't matter because I don't think this show implemented that well. I only rate a show really poorly if it really disappoints me and I get mad about the lack of potential. But the problem is, and this one did have a lack of potential, but the characters weren't interesting enough for me to really care that much, to get that invested in it. Be like, man, this show had so much potential, but it's like when the characters were so lame, I don't really care as much. Would I recommend this to people? Yes, I actually would, because I think this is one of those animes where it's like, hey, that everyone should at least watch to at least get the feel of it. Like, just like it's one of those ones that everyone should have in their repertoire. It's like, oh, you see Megalo Box? Yeah, I watched Megalo Box. Like so to have an understanding of the style. So would I recommend it? Yes, but do I like it? No.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. It's a very easy watch. Like we kind of, from the week to week, I was on my knees, or I wasn't on my knees. I was
Whoa.
This is a PG podcast, Tori.
I'm sorry.
This is rated M now.
I don't even know. What do you do when you're waiting for something?
You're on the edge of your seat.
I was on the edge of my seat.
On your knees on the edge of the seat.
Like, trying to figure out what happens. And, even though by the end of it, it wasn't that great, did I wish I didn't waste my time watching these 13 episodes? No, not really.
I do.
It was, oh man.
Keep going.
I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, I don't think the characters were that great. I agree, but it was beautiful to watch. The music was good, and some of the moments where you can, truly understand what's going on a little bit, like that one episode with the soldier guy. Spoiler alerts. I think those make for it to be...
Makes it worth it.
Yeah, makes it at least a 3 out of 5.
Okay, okay.
Okay, very interesting. Well, I guess that's it. Is that it? I think we did it.
I think
We did it.
Yes, we did.
That's the show.
It was a lot of fun to have this discussion. As lame as the show was, I like this discussion.
Yeah, I like that. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys enjoy listening to it / watching it. It's not really a video. There's just an image on the screen, most likely. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. We just came back from a long hiatus for Anime Ricochet. But if you liked this, please go check out the other ones. We made a bunch of Anime Ricochets of other sports animes. So go and give those a try. There will be more Anime Ricochets to come. And yeah, anything else, Kobe?
No, you can find us on Nerd Blaze, the YouTube channel, which has a lot of different anime videos, as you said. And we're also on Twitter at the Nerd Blaze.
Sounds good, Tori.
You also could listen to our breakdowns of Megalo Box that we did episode as they kind of premiered. If you've never seen it, or maybe if you want to get a general idea, because the opinions of this Anime Ricochet are from us who have already seen the entire anime, and then our thoughts as a whole. But if you listen to those podcasts from week to week, you could see how our opinions have changed, or how our thoughts have changed, or even just get more in depth about the episode as it was aired.
Yeah, how about this? Watch the show, listen to the week to week, then when you're finished, listen to this one again.
Man, after you're done listening to it this time, because you have to reach this end here.
Yeah, this is a lot of depth to this episode particularly. There's a lot of layers. You got to peel it back like an onion. You know what I mean?
I do know.
Listen to it a lot.
All right, cool.
All right, well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking with me, everyone, Tori and Kobe.
Yeah, this was fun. Tori, thank you. And Jeff, thank you.
Yeah,
this is just a time where we all
Thanks,
thank each
Kobe.
other. We all thank each other.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kobe.
Thank you.
Jeff.
All right.
I'm glad to be on this episode.
See ya.
Oh.
Oh, you just cut her off.
Bye.
Bye.
Dang. Bye.